Good morning, I'm Adam Sexton. New Hampshire is bracing for the full impact of the coronavirus pandemic in the weeks ahead. It's a crisis of monumental proportions, and the individual whose job it is to lead the state through this very uncertain period is with us this morning. Governor Chris Sununu, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start with this stay-at-home order. This is something you had wanted to avoid for as long as possible, and then you decided it was time to go with that on Thursday. What happened in that brief time period between that Wednesday of last week and Thursday that changed your mind to move forward with that?
Well, this entire dynamic has been so incredibly fluid. I mean, hour to hour to day to day, things are moving just so rapidly. We looked at Massachusetts and Vermont. They did similar orders earlier in the week on Monday, Tuesday. We're in the fortunate position here in New Hampshire where to date, while we have had some of the higher per capita testing availability across the region, we haven't seen, luckily, the positive cases. We're at about 150, and that is constantly growing, of course, but we're not at the severe case Massachusetts is. Now, that has given us the ability to be a little more flexible, look at data, look at how it's playing out in other states, and appreciating that while we are individual states, we're also regional partners, right? There's so much economy that goes across our border. There's so our families, our communities, we're all interconnected. So what we've tried to do is say, okay, let's take this approach, this next step forward. We knew we were going to have to do it with schools because that was just kind of inevitable that we're going to have to push that to May. Let's link everything together, give people time to plan and prepare over the next 5 weeks, understand that the worst is probably still yet to come, right? We're going to have a medical surge here. It's going to be very serious. We want people to understand that. So now was the appropriate time to take the step, and we were able to use I think some good data and understanding to get ourselves in line and be consistent with that regional message.
When you talk about the essential versus the non-essential businesses, how did you draw that line? It seems like there are a lot of businesses that are deemed essential. And so what's different between where we were and where we are? And we've gotten some email from people saying, well, why are things like car dealerships deemed essential?
Sure. So we went through each one by one. And again, we looked at what Massachusetts had done, what Vermont and Maine had done. We have to find our own formula there, if you will. So there are some changes. But on the whole, we're all in somewhat of the same boat. Car dealerships, for example, are transportation, right? If someone needs a car, if they need their car repaired, we want to make sure that they're not just strictly homebound and really can't get to a job if it is deemed essential and they have that job. We want to make sure that they get there. And when you go through each one of these essential businesses, it's amazing how they all contribute in some pretty vital ways to making sure our most vital and essential services are being provided.
Do you believe New Hampshire will have even close to the number of ventilators that it's going to need in the weeks ahead?
It's a complete unknown, but I think we're going to get there. I do. I feel very confident that we're building a system to handle the surge. So it's not just ventilators, it's beds, right? We know there's going to be a high need for beds. We have about 2,000 beds in the state. We've been one of the more aggressive states already in building out our flex and surge capacities. Manchester is up and running. Nashua is ready to go. We have 6 or 7 others that we can build. And with help of our National Guard, we've laid a plan. We could build more bed capacity literally in a matter of days. I think Manchester's got up and running in 72 hours. It was really incredible, an awesome feat. So we know that we can be flexible. On the ventilator side, it's tough to tell, but we have about 1,000 ventilators, let's say, in the state. We will likely need more, and we're making requests for them. We're working with businesses. We have manufacturers in the state that are changing their models so they can start building ventilators for us. So in the coming weeks, hopefully we can gear up and make sure that the citizens of New Hampshire know we are going to be prepared.
Do you have a ballpark on how many more you're going to need?
I don't. Frankly, the more the merrier. I mean, because we don't have a ballpark really in terms of where we think we're going to see the surge. There's models that say all different things. One thing that we are going to be limited on, though, is just manpower, right? So we have all these volunteers come in, and Commissioner Shibinette has done an incredible job leading that effort. Folks coming out of the word work, whether it's former doctors or folks that even maybe just that were temporarily in the medical field that can just help out on the front lines of this. That's going to be very critical.
Shouldn't the president invoke the Defense Production Act here? It seems like states are competing against each other. Hospitals are competing against each other for this precious resource. Wouldn't it be easier if the president just streamlined that whole process?
The Defense Production Act would be a very useful tool, and we've encouraged him to do so. I hope that he does and kind of goes full bore with it. It'll provide a lot of flexibility for us to maneuver, a lot of financial flexibility to actually get a lot of these larger facilities retooled and geared up and running. We just don't know how long we're going to be in this. It's not weeks. It is likely months, and folks have to be prepared for that. And that's why going with a stay-at-home order is very difficult. It's a very difficult decision, but you have to understand the more we prepare today, we can suppress that viral spread. We're asking folks just to they need to stay at home. You are healthier at home, but only leave if you really have to, whether it's for exercise or work, go to get groceries or gas, the most vital needs for you and your family. family. Other than that, we really need folks to stay at home.
You and other governors are taking this long-term view. You're telling people to prepare for a long haul, and yet President Trump is saying we want to get the country up and running again by Easter. Does that make any sense to you?
Look, it makes sense in that I think the president wants folks to know a couple things. There is an end game to this at some point. I think Easter's a little optimistic, but he does have that kind of very big responsibility of making sure people have hope, that they're going to get through this. This isn't going to be some drawn-out, long, multi-year recession. We all pray that it doesn't get there. And because our economy was so strong going in, I think what he's trying to do is remind people that if and when we get through this, and when we do, we will be stronger coming out. We're going to come out with a lot of strength. We don't have a liquidity problem in our markets. We don't have a lot of subprime loans sinking and tanking banks, nothing like that. This is an external variable. And when you remove that external variable, it's going to allow our economy to move quickly. I think Easter's probably a little optimistic, but again, I think he's just trying to also shine a light to the fact that not everyone is in New York's position, right? Some folks are in a much more minor position, like Montana or North Carolina or North Dakota or South Dakota. States like that haven't seen surges even to the level of New Hampshire. So he's also, I think, trying to look at the possibility of taking a regional approach. Whether that's practical or not, I'm not sure. We're all in uncharted territories. It's all very unknown right now. But again, he's trying to give hope. I think more realistically here in New Hampshire, you're looking at 5 or 6 weeks out at least until we can actually see any type of relief.
So far, New Hampshire hasn't released very much location-specific information about positive COVID-19 tests. Some other locations, municipalities, big cities are doing maps and saying, here are our pinpoint on where we see positives. Why not give more public information in a situation like this?
So when our numbers were smaller, by highlighting just a person here and a person there and a person there, we're really trying to make sure we don't release unintended information about those individuals. As more and more cases come on, as they are, we know they are, it allows us a little more flexibility in pinpointing that. So beginning next week, we will be putting out at least a town-by-town map so people can at least see where those numbers are within their towns. But again, we wanted to make sure that the numbers were there so we can still maintain the anonymity of those individuals who are positive.
And this is a pretty stark conversation, but there's a wave of mortality essentially coming along with this. We're on a curve. It's going to go up. What have state health officials told you in terms of how many deaths to expect here in New Hampshire?
The models vary. I mean, we look at different models all the time. There were some models 3 weeks ago that were predicting thousands. There are some models that predict hundreds. I think the unfortunate, it's one of those things where one is too many, right? We know that. But it's one of those unfortunate situations where the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. And then we extrapolate out what we've seen across the world in terms of the number of people that test positive versus the number that need hospitalization versus the number of mortalities that you might be able to expect, or the number that need ICU or ventilation care. So we're building all those models out based on what we've seen. The fact that we've been able to test at such a high rate in New Hampshire gives us a lot more confidence probably than some other states in terms of where this is going to go. At the end of the day, I think we're building our surge capacity for where it needs to be, and at whatever level the crisis may be for those individuals, we're going to be able to provide the best care possible.
But people should be prepared for a number of Granite Staters to die from this.
The mortality rate could be high. We all know that. It's across the country. It's an unfortunate aspect of a pandemic, but that's why we're taking these big steps today. We're taking them early to suppress that, to increase the viral suppression, elongate. We have, I mean, bending the curve and flattening the curve seems to be the wording of the day, but it really is important. The longer we can flatten that curve, it allows us to manage the healthcare system, allow people to know that their access is going to be there. It extends it a little longer, and then maybe we have a vaccine or some other drugs that could come on the line to help folks with the most severe symptoms.
What do you make of this argument that's playing out sometimes in terms of, I mean, see it online, see it on some cable news from time to time, of public health versus the economy? People saying we don't want the cure to be worse than the disease. Where do you stand on that spectrum in terms of when to decide, when to turn that engine back on, I guess?
Well, look, public health has to be paramount. You're dealing with a pandemic. Public health has to come first. But there's also a balance of are you getting appreciable better results with public health at the risk of the economy? And so that's a very logical argument to make. And so that's where really it falls on me to strike that balance. And that's why we have essential businesses open, non-essential being shut down. We're having a stay-at-home order in place. We're not doing a shelter in place where we're forcing people into their homes. We're shutting down roads. I mean, that's what people were asking for earlier in the week. Shelter us everybody in place. I got letters and calls saying, stop Massachusetts people from coming into the Granite state. I appreciate that fear. I do. We all have those anxieties, but I can't do that, and that's not practical. We're not going to, hopefully we don't get to the point where we're putting the National Guard on our streets to force people back into their homes. That would be absolutely terrible. So that's where, again, we're trying to strike that balance and make sure essential businesses can move forward. The unemployment, the ability to expand unemployment, I think has been tremendous here in our state. The ability for the federal government to come in and provide more financial relief for those individuals affected helps give us the ability to be a little tougher on the public health side, knowing that economically individuals will have some more financial flexibility.
Looking farther down the line here, New Hampshire has a very minimalist tax structure by design. What's going to be the impact to the state budget here?
The impact will be big. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we're looking at we've kind of frozen a lot of the what I guess we would deem as non-essential hires in this moment. There's a lot of we were in a very good place coming into this crisis, so there's no immediate needs other than maybe DCYF, corrections officers. We want to keep those things moving. A lot of new programs we'll have to take a pause on, and we're working with all of our agency heads, all the commissioners and whatnot, to figure out, okay, where can we pull back on some of the discretionary spending? Where can we pull back? Because it is going to have an impact, to be sure.
We've got a big statewide primary election coming up in 4 months. We're likely still going to be on the downward side of that curve and not wanting to see a bump again or even a level of an unacceptable nature. Would it be reasonable to expect an order from you at some point to expand no-fault absentee ballots to ensure that the volunteers, who are largely seniors, aren't put at risk?
Well, we'll look at the models, but I got to tell you, we allow a lot of flexibility in our balloting process now, to be honest. We have such a high voter turnout rate. There are certain districts that can make sure that there aren't lines in congregation, that you have the social distancing in the ballot process. We're still a ways away from that. I've talked to Secretary Gardner. Again, New Hampshire is in a really good place coming into this. We can manage. We do everything at very localized and town level, which gives them a lot of flexibility to manage around some of those social distancing and appropriate healthcare practices we want to see in place. I don't anticipate anything with increasing absentee balloting right now, because we already have so much flexibility there, but it's something we can always look at.
You've got 3 kids. Everybody's in a new reality right now who's a parent in terms of teaching at home. Yeah. Tell us how distance learning is going in the Sununu household.
Well, I'd love to hear how it's going in the Sexton household too. It's going actually very, very well. So I have an 8th grader and a 9th grader. They do a lot of stuff online. We're fortunate. We're in the Seacoast, so we can do a lot online. My 1st grader, they kind of picked up the classroom and put it in the house, and obviously Valerie used to be a teacher, so we handle it pretty well. What I love is I came home, my son was doing art class online with Mo Willems, who's a children's author, and they were doing exercise, almost like PE online with one of the local gyms that was doing online exercises. I think maybe Planet Fitness might even do it as well. So it's amazing the number of folks who are kind of, again, changing their models to help us adapt and help families adapt to this new norm, which will definitely be in place till May 4th and could be longer. We don't know yet, but it could be.
One last question for you here. You were here just a few weeks ago, and on this tablet I had a question about coronavirus, and I feel terrible that I didn't ask it now. In some ways I was thinking in my head, oh, I've got to get these few things in, and that was just
we'll get to it in a couple weeks.
Right, yeah, it was lower down the list.
It's unbelievable.
I didn't see the full magnitude of this coming, or else I would have asked you that question. Do you think you as well, perhaps, are we all surprised in a certain way by how bad this got, and why didn't we see what was on this tsunami that was on the horizon that was happening everywhere else in the country? I'm sorry, everywhere else in the world.
In the world. Look, I think everyone is shocked by how bad it has gotten. I got to tell you, I feel very positive about how quickly we reacted, right? So, we had our press conference a month ago when we had our first case here in New Hampshire, the congressional delegation and myself, we were there, we were talking about it, we were talking about social distancing, what it meant, the things we were going to start looking at and putting into place. They went right to work in Washington, we went right to work in New Hampshire. But the fact that a month ago, we had 2.5% unemployment, it was hard to find workforce in the strongest economy in the Northeast, and now we're looking at literally 20 to 30% unemployment, potentially, when this is all said and done. It's absolutely devastating. And the fact that people are going to have potentially trouble putting food on the table, which is why, again, we expand the unemployment benefits. One of my first executive orders is you can't be evicted, you can't be foreclosed on, and they cannot shut off your utilities. At a minimum, we want people to know that they can be in their homes, they can put food on the table with some help with the federal government as well. We're going to get through this, and there is going to be a back end. Whether it's 5 weeks away or 5 months away, we're still not quite sure, but we are going to get to a back end of this. Why didn't we see it coming? I think people saw it coming. I don't think anybody in this country is to blame for anything, frankly. But again, I'll just focus on when we looked at the numbers here in New Hampshire. Speaking just for New Hampshire, not for I can't speak for Washington or other states. I think this team really rallied together as a whole, put all politics aside, simply put their heads down, and they've been working very hard to get the job done. And I can't thank them enough.
Governor Sununu, thanks for joining us on Close Up.
Thank you.
We appreciate your time.